101.9 WDET FM. I'm Tia Graham, and this week we've been joined by WDET's news director, Jerome Vaughn. Jerome, how has this week been for you so far?
This week has been great. The commute has been better than when I did a week at the Takeaway in New York City.
Yeah.
So this has been a lot of fun. And of course, you know, it's always fun working with you, Tia.
I feel the same exact way. Once again, it's a full circle moment from intern to newsroom to where we are now. So it's been great working with you in all areas of my career so far.
Well, I'm looking forward to doing a lot more of that in the days ahead.
Indeed, indeed. So what's on the show today?
Well, we're going to visit an unusual athletic club in Delray, and it's Friday, so we're going to talk Detroit Documenters.
Which is always a fun conversation to learn about what's going on in our city council and in our meetings. However, to start the show, a collective of social justice organizations have teamed up to create a space for art and justice to thrive in Detroit. The Love Building aims to nurture creativity and creating more inclusive spaces in the city. So, what happens when the art community and advocacy community join forces? And what change is expected to come from this collaboration? Joining us now to chat more about the Love Building and its mission is Kwaku Osei. Kwaku is the executive director of the Love Building. Kwaku, welcome to the Metro.
Thank you, Tia. It's a pleasure to be here.
Awesome. So the Love Building, it is opening up in a few days with a beautiful grand opening celebration for a few days, actually.
That's right.
How long have you all been planning this building? Where did this idea come from?
Yeah. So the short story is this was birthed. There's a couple of origin stories. I'll give you the brief of it. So Allied Media Projects needed a new space. They were in Midtown, and they had been searching. And then one day, the lore is that there was a beautiful party with a number of nonprofit leaders there, including Jeanette Lee, who was at the time the executive director of Allied Media Projects, Dessa Cosma, who's the current leader of Detroit Disability Power, and then Amanda Alexander, who was the founder and at the time executive director of Detroit Justice Center. So the story goes, they're at a party, waiting for the bathroom, and got to have this conversation that helps them recognize that they all needed new space, and how great would it be if we could, not just party together, but actually work together. And so it was birthed out of a certain type of love while waiting to, do a bio break type situation. Yeah. And, sometimes some of the greatest things happen organically in that way.
I was going to say, Kwaku, it's always a joke, it's a running joke, but things get done in the women's bathroom, ladies' bathroom.
Hey.
We meet up in there. Sometimes we have conversations, and before you know it, a whole idea has birthed out of that. And here it is, the Love Building. Like you said, the lore goes. Mm-hmm. The Love Building's birthed outside of the ladies' bathroom, which is amazing. So who are the main organizations represented in this space? You talked about Allied Media Projects. You talked a little bit about Detroit Disability Power and the Detroit Justice Center. But there are a few others as well.
That's right. So in addition to those, we have Detroit Community Technology Projects, which was responsible for the Equitable Internet Initiative, amongst other things. We also have Detroit Narrative Agency, People in Education, and then the Love Building, we are ourselves a nonprofit.
Which
so
is
7
really
of us in all.
cool. Well, can you go into what the Love Building itself is as a nonprofit? Because I was just thinking that the Love Building was the name of the building. So what's that nonprofit?
Yeah, so what we're looking to do is to increasingly evolve the space, other than just being a beautiful home to those great organizations. And what I should say is, while each of those organizations are distinct in their own way, what is the common thread is that each of them are essentially creating new pathways that would allow for joy, liberation, and just creating new pathways for freedom for Detroiters and beyond, and really just proving what's possible. So in any event, we as the Love Building, we're increasingly trying to take this space and increasingly evolve it to what I call a lab, where the experimentation is going to be focused on really pushing the boundaries for what community-rooted economic development, community control, and ownership looks like. And then, of course, we're having our grand opening next week, which I'm sure we'll talk a little bit about. But above and beyond that, post the grand opening, a lot of our programming, events, and activities are going to be centered around health, wealth, and love. And we're just really excited about some of the things we've been cooking up.
Nice.
So I want to ask you, I don't want to gloss over it. Why did you pick this name for the building and for the foundation?
So, happy accident. So there's so many of those.
What's the lore?
Yeah, so what I will share is that there is a lot of synchronicities and a lot of And sometimes, you know, that's how you know it's meant to be. So this was a building that had several lives prior to us inhabiting it. And there was actually a mural on the building that had a sign language kind of love signaled out. So the building, we acquired the building in 2018 and said, hey, yeah, it's going to be the Love Building because the mural was already there and it just made sense and we ran with it. But, you know, you'll find when you come into the building, that's a name that really fits.
I like the way it sounds. I can, you know, hopefully when you hear Detroiters talk about it, yeah, we went to the Love Building. Yeah, we were at the Love Building. So hopefully that starts to catch on. If you're just joining us, we're chatting with Kwaku Osei, the executive director of the Love Building. We're chatting about the Love Building in the Detroit neighborhood that is Core City. And the building is trying to amplify justice, creativity, and community cohesion. And I think about all of those things. Recently, we had Sabrina Nelson on, who is So Sabrina Nelson is a well-known artist.
Can I say something about that? She was actually instrumental. So when you come into the Love Building, you'll find that there's a tremendous amount of art, and it's Detroiters art. And she was very instrumental in selecting the artist and helping us identify who would grace the walls of the space. So Sabrina's genius is weaved in and up and down throughout the building, and we're so thankful for that.
I mean, she touches so many different spaces and places throughout the city of Detroit, which including the Love Building now, which is something I just brought up out of the whim. But one of the things that I took away from a conversation that I had with Sabrina about her recent exhibit that's at the Charles H. Wright Museum, the James Baldwin exhibit, and she talked about activism and art and how they go hand in hand, and you can't have one without the other because one speaks to the other and vice versa. So when we talk about this type of building, bringing those two communities together, how, I guess, effortless is it, or how easy is it to have those communities come together? Yeah,
it's an ongoing thing, and it's a thing that I think we're relearning because quite frankly, I think some of our, maybe some of the strongest movements we've seen are several decades prior to us.
Yeah.
And so that type of cooperation and collaboration is something that we're quite frankly relearning and modernizing for this age. And I'll say that we're off to a great start, but, you know, we got a ways to go, but I'm excited because it's a beautiful thing. And, you know, I think if we think about the last few decades in this country, society-wise, you know, there's a lot of individualism. There's a lot of competition and fierce, independence and such. We're looking at increasingly demonstrating a new way of doing things that is more entrenched in interdependence. And the fact that, like, we're all in this together. And if we come together, there's a lot of things that we all desire that happen to have a lot of commonalities. And so when we come together and we leverage each of our strengths, our skills, our assets, then there's just so much possibility. And we're already demonstrating that in the Love Building in ways that I'm just so excited to be able to show and bring more people along that type of journey with us, because it's just, you got to understand, like, I wake up almost every day, I feel like a kid, and it's like a professional playground. I get to work with very beautiful people doing really, really, really impactful, beautiful work, and it's an honor and privilege. Anyway, let me stop.
No, because you're talking about the love of your work, the passion that you have for the work that you're able to do in the city of Detroit, but in the way that you're able to do it with the people around you in these different organizations. So bringing together those organizations is a pattern that I've noticed. Like you said, a new way of doing things. It's something that I've noticed throughout the city of Detroit in general the last few years, of so many organizations, grassroots organizations, maybe even mid-grade organizations coming together, working together, especially when you all have the same goal at hand. So if you can expand on that, we just talked about a little bit more. That's why I wanted you to keep being passionate about it, because that's exactly what I wanted to talk about, this movement that we're seeing in Detroit of this collective work to help the people.
Yeah. I just say that a coalition building and what I'll kind of call combining and conquering, and not conquering in the traditional sense, but just that you think about the everyday person's the typical life of the everyday person, and when we think about the last several years, pre-pandemic and then especially even post-pandemic, is like, do we want to continue to live this way? And I think the answer that a lot of people have is no, because there's a number of, you look at stress, anxiety, depression, all of those are trending in the opposite direction than we would hope for. Loneliness is a thing, and isolation is a thing that, And so we don't want to do that anymore. And there's just so many other ways to go about carrying on individually and collectively. And we, with a lot of the stuff that we intend to do, we just want to expose, experiment, we're going to try a bunch of different things because but we want to expose people to different things because quite frankly, if you haven't tried some things, you don't know. You actually don't know if you like it, if it's for you or if it's not for you. You might not even know that that's a thing that exists that could be very helpful. And so, that's a little bit of the passion leaking out because again, it's a privilege to be able to aggregate the resources we have. And very fortunately, we've been on the receiving end of a lot of generosity from many individuals and many foundations, both local and national. I would name some, but I won't do that now because I might miss some. But, many great people, many great hands, including Sabrina Nelson, including BridgeDetroit, including Science, including, there's so many names of folks that have come in. Halima have come in and have touched this building in different, at different times and different periods. And now it's all culminating together to kind of with this initial grand opening, but that's just going to continue. And I think actually this grand opening we'll have next week is our first official love letter, if you would, to the city. But after that, it's like, come on, come get this love. And the highest hope is that when you come into the building, you'll feel that love, but that we're not creating an oasis. We're creating a situation in which you come in, you get something that you need, but then you're able to take that back out. And then this ripples that affect and impact positively all the other people that that need that type of energy and vibration.
And, before we let you go, we got about a minute and a half, 2 minutes left. What does justice for Detroiters look like, especially when we talk about the collective of groups that are there? You have some power hitters there who've been working in the city of Detroit, really, really hitting the ground. So what does justice look like for Detroiters, and what does it look like from the Love Building standpoint? What's that definition there?
Now, that's a tough question to answer. But what I'll say briefly is that I think justice is uplift. First of all, making time and space to listen, and to receive, and then to uplift. And, a thing that, and I know we only have a minute, so I'll try to be brief about this, but going back to the resources we've been able to aggregate, we hope that we continue to be in that position because my highest hope is that increasingly, as we go back to that lab analogy, that this is going to become a vehicle for community empowerment, economic empowerment, but really we'll continue to get these resources and be a really beautiful facilitator of getting resources back out to the folks in the community. Quite frankly, I think if you think about, this city, there's a number of people that are in underprivileged economic situations. Growing up myself, Section 8 housing and so on and so forth, that conditions forced a certain level of resourcefulness that then kind of emerged as creativity. So quite frankly, I think that there's a tremendous amount of people all throughout the city that have come up with solutions to their everyday problems. And they're really ingenious solutions, but unfortunately, because they are perhaps not credentialed, because they don't have resources, because they don't have an outlet or platform, they are not able to take that any further than their own respective household. And I think we're all disadvantaged because of that. What we want to do is become a space where, regardless of where you are, we can't do everything for everyone, but we could at least be a connector or facilitator in helping folks have that outlet, have that platform to get their genius out.
Well, we just heard from Kwaku Osei, the executive director of the Love Building. I want to say thank you so much for joining us on the Metro.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
The Love Building is set to open with a grand celebration September 3rd through September 6th with a series of events designed to showcase its mission. The Love Building is located at 4731 Grand River Avenue in Detroit, and that's in Core City. Kwaku, once again, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Tia. Thank you, Jerome. Really appreciate it.
Metro on 101.9 WDET FM. Jerome, those are the type of stories and type of people that really, really inspire me to want to know more about what's happening within those organizations and communities and how they're impacting folks. So, great conversation.
those are the sorts of stories that are making a difference in the city of Detroit and how it's seen around the state, around the world, and looking for solutions to things going on in the city. That's why you are talking to folks like this. Coming up in just a minute, well, we'll discuss the history of a members-only club in Detroit and the significance that it has to people in the Delray community. You're listening to The Metro right here on 1019 WDET. On 1019 WDET FM, I'm Tia Graham here with WDET's news director, Jerome Vaughn. I almost called you Jerome WDET. Well, I'll take that as well. Okay. The Carbon Athletic Club is one of those places in Detroit that makes you wish the walls could talk. The members-only club has nearly 80 years of history. Once a blind pig during Prohibition, it eventually became a clubhouse for the Carbon Athletic semi-pro football team. They played their games right across the railroad tracks. WDET's Jack Philbrandt bellied up to the bar with Mary Beth Beaudry, the club's president, to discuss the history they're preserving and the service they provide the community today.
In the 80s, it was thriving. All of the auto companies nearby, their workers would come here on their lunch break or right after work. That started changing. Also, the smoking law changed things, so it died down for a while. We are now experiencing a resurgence. We were so private and so quiet for so long, but now that we're on social media and people are hearing about us and we're putting on cool events, I'm an event planner. That's what I do for a living. And Carbon is a love child that I get to do the fun stuff, the fun parts of event planning that I don't get to do in the corporate wedding world. So throwing those events has introduced so many people to the club. A lot of them live 12 miles away or more, which is quite a ways. We mapped them out at one time. So there's less people that are in the area, I guess, of Delray that are coming, but a lot of people in Southwest are hearing about us and coming out. We have a lot of members from Hamtramck and Grosse Pointe, Southfield, wherever.
What do you think brings people to this corner of Detroit?
It's a shock. I'm always shocked. We put out so many different alerts of how to get here, how to avoid the trains, but the trains can sit here for hours. And we are in what I would consider the armpit of Delray, of Detroit, really. And I say that with love. We are a weird motley crew group, a bunch of weirdos coming together. This space, Carbon in general, the vibe here is unchanged. We are not going to have craft cocktails. We're not upping our prices. I mean, most beers are $2.25. We're not doing the fancy stuff just to get people here, which really speaks a lot to the environment that we create, the community. This club in itself has always been an ad hoc project amongst the members. All of the members are owners. You get a key to the front door, but more importantly, you get voting rights, so you get to decide what happens. Nobody takes money to work here, to be a part of the board, anything. So it's a place where you can find like-minded, Actually, I would say you don't find like-minded people. You find all different types of people. The amount of arguments I have in here regarding politics and whatever, it for a while sustained me and for a while broke me. I mean, during tumultuous times, there's really intense debate. But overall, everybody realizes that there's a common thread throughout the membership.
As the neighborhood is changing, why do you think it's important to preserve not only third spaces like this, but historic third spaces that have a long and rich history with the community?
I think so much of this new Detroit has wiped away the old Detroit. This has always been a really hard-working, head-to-the-ground, blue-collar city, and the people who stuck out all the hard years here, and also have dealt with all the pollution and the freeway going through and breaking up a vibrant town, Delray specifically, but like all of Detroit is this way. These places, they're few and far between, and I'd hate to see anything happen to it. We've been trying to work on getting a historical designation. The board is swamped with everything that they're doing. We would love some help on that, but we don't want to see this place go. Even when we've had $1,200 in the bank account, our members were pitching in to make sure we stayed open. Yeah, I think it's just imperative to keep places like this around for as long as we can to preserve that history.
And it's such a time capsule of Detroit. Can you describe for our listeners what it's like sitting at the bar in a Carbon Athletic Club?
It's different every day, but actually this is a perfect time because this is you're just kind of hearing the hum of some guys who just got out of work, and they're maybe from Ford, engineers. Actually, Andy over here is one. Smells probably still like smoke, despite no one is allowed to smoke in here, and they haven't since I came on board. And since the smoking ban, technically, let's say that. There is like a rich, dark, old school library feel here. You expect your grandpa to be drinking gin here, or scotch. This place is always like humming with people interjecting in conversation. I hear so-and-so down at the end of the bar, and I'm getting involved in that conversation. Everybody knows each other's names. Somebody's bringing in tomatoes and dropping them at the front table from their garden. Mike, who's bartending right now, his kid makes projects and brings them to all of his favorite people, or his wife makes cupcakes. It's just like a very entertaining spot to be because there's always something going on.
How does having this home away from home help you in your life?
I grew up as a daughter of a union steward. I was knocking on doors, and I was picketing and striking for the Detroit News. That's just who my dad was. So when I started working in fine dining restaurants and doing events for a lot of money, corporate events and big weddings, for me, I lost a bit of who I was. And so coming here, even though it was a second job for me, I have fully committed myself to this place for 7 years now. I needed it, even in times where I was overwhelmed by the amount of work. I needed it. I needed the community. I needed to some regulars that to me back about politics or anything else. It just is a very homey place. It reminds me of home.
One thing that I saw when I came in is the train. You can't miss the train tracks, and you definitely cannot miss the sound of the train. Can you talk about the train Christmas party that you guys hold every year?
It's our biggest party of the year. We have live entertainment, but really the train is also the live entertainment. So the train is lit up. It goes all over the country. I think there's multiple trains that go through Canada and the U.S., and they come from Ontario straight through right in front of our building. We get maybe 700 people here, kids, all ages. We have hot chocolate. We've got bars out in the parking lot. Every once in a while, we'll have someone dress up as Santa. We can never promise it. We really have to incentivize to get someone to do it. But we used to have huge Christmas parties for kids here. But one day, we hope to again. This building, because we sit over the salt mines, it used to shake at, I think it was 120 every single day. And so our foundation and our basement needs a lot of help. And we need some brickwork done. We need a lot of help. But that fundraiser helps us to put enough money in the bank so that way we can make the little repairs throughout the year that can at least sustain the building as long as possible.
That was WDET's Jack Philbrandt at the Carbon Athletic Club with Mary Beth Beaudry. You can experience the Carbon Athletic Club for yourself at their Pig Roast fundraiser on September 21st. That's at 111 North Gate Street in Delray. Delray is the farthest southwest corner of Detroit, just north of Zug Island.
It's the Metro.
Today, a chance of rain this afternoon with a high of 89 degrees. Tomorrow, Saturday, another chance of rain in the morning, otherwise clear skies, 82 degrees. Sunday, sunny skies and 82. And Labor Day, sunny with a high of 76 degrees. Hopefully that holds. Usually it's really hot on Labor Day.
In the news, the Michigan Public Service Commission reportedly says it is unlikely that utility customers who lost power during this week's storms will receive any credit on their bills. Hundreds of thousands of customers across the state lost power. The commission had set aside a $38 utility credit to help compensate customers, but the Free Press reports the commission indicates the outage will likely be repaired quickly enough that neither of the major utilities involved, Consumers Energy or DTE Energy, will issue many credits.
Coming up, we'll talk about what the Kamala Harris campaign is doing to court young voters in Detroit and around the state of Michigan. You all stay right there. It's the Metro on 101.9 WDET FM. I'm Tia Graham here with WDET's news director, Jerome Vaughn. Jerome, I have a question for you. Our next conversation is talking about young voters, and you've been covering elections for a while in the news.
Just a little while.
Just a little bit. What do you see about this year in particular that's maybe different from other years in terms of young voters? What are you seeing?
I think there's a certain group of them that are very engaged, and I think the candidates are widely differing on so many things, and the candidates are not necessarily who we thought they were going to be a month ago.
I know, it's all changing so very fast. But like everyone else who was eligible to vote, young people matter in politics. But the difference between young people and everyone else is that they turn out to vote in much lower numbers. That's true for almost every generation of young Americans. But that doesn't mean politicians don't try to get them to the polls anyway. On the contrary, Kamala Harris' campaign is working hard to get young people to vote in higher numbers during the presidential election. Very proud of her. That's why the Florida Congressman Maxwell Frost and Detroit City Council President Mary Sheffield are meeting with voters today at a Detroit cafe. To talk more about the effort to turn out young people for Harris and how young Detroiters feel about Harris, we have Malachi Barrett here. He is a reporter for BridgeDetroit. Malachi, welcome back to the Metro.
Hey, Tia. Hey, Jerome. How's it going, guys?
It's going great. Great to hear your voice. So just jumping into things, what is the significance of this event today in Detroit and the effort in trying to turn out young people to vote?
Yeah, so Maxwell Frost, he's the first member of Congress elected from Gen Z. He's 27, youngest member of Congress. He's on a blitz across the country right now, visiting a lot of college towns. He was in Detroit last night, actually. They went to Cred Cafe over off Jefferson down by the riverfront. And they basically held a mixer for social media influencers and content creators because the campaign is really trying to tap into people who are very online to spread the campaign's message to their audiences, their large followings. And they actually identified a number of influencers here in Detroit who do a lot of different kind of vlogging and content creation about life in the city, trying to encourage them basically use that platform to talk about why, young people should vote for Kamala Harris. And, in an era where online attention is more valuable than gold, it's been really interesting to see how after Kamala Harris took the mantle from Joe Biden, the campaign has really leaned into this online strategy. So that's kind of what this is all about. Maxwell Frost is moving around the state. I think he's in Ann Arbor today and going to Grand Rapids as well, trying to talk to people on college campuses and get more young people involved in politics.
So Malachi, you hit on it just a little bit there, the Harris campaign trying to court young influencers with the event last night. For someone who might not know, who is an influencer and why do they matter to politics in the first place?
Yeah, influencers, I guess, they do a lot of different things. They're basically just people that have a large audience online, be it on Instagram or TikTok or YouTube. There's kind of a blend of like lifestyle content creators that have political advocacy kind of baked into it a little bit. So for one example, Taylor Hale, she's a Detroit native. She was kind of launched into the national spotlight after winning Big Brother. She was the first Black woman to win that TV show. And she's got, 213 followers on Instagram, posts a lot of different things. Like in one video, she'll be doing a makeup routine, or she'll be at the Kids' Choice Awards next to like a giant SpongeBob SquarePants figure. And then in another video, she'll be talking about, the ceasefire movement and advocating for Palestinians, or dancing with Gretchen Whitmer and talking about the impact of abortion rights. And so I think for, people that are used to kind of speaking the language of young people online, where political advocacy is really blended in with get ready with me videos and here's how I'm doing my makeup routine. It seems like kind of a natural extension, people talking about things that are important to them in their lives. I mean, politics touches on a lot of things. So that's the kind of energy I think they're trying to tap into.
And from what you've been able to dig up, how are young voters in the city interpreting these presidential campaigns? What are they thinking about right now, or what can you see that they're noticing or thinking about?
Yeah, I think I've noticed a really a quick kind of spike in interest and enthusiasm among young people since Kamala Harris rose to the top of the ticket and replaced Biden. I've seen a shift in the conversation away from kind of frustration with Biden's age and talking about, does he have the juice to like take on Trump, to now, more talking about issues. I talked to a 25-year-old voter last night who was like, just felt kind of like a deep sense of relief that she could focus more on like talking about what's in Project 2025 and why, the things that she likes about Kamala Harris, instead of having to wonder about whether, the candidate was able to, do the job and had kind of the stamina and fitness for that. I think there is still some like disillusionment that the campaigns are trying to work through. They're trying to encourage people to get politically involved. A lot of the people that come to these campaign events don't need convincing of that, but they are convincing friends and family that it's worth it being involved in politics, and that, people actually are impacted by the decisions made by presidents, and that there's actually like some stake that people will have in that. People have some agency in it. But, millennials and Gen Z, kind of the target of this movement, are a growing demographic in the voting base. They're capturing more political power. From 2016 to 2020, voters between the ages of 18 and 35, turnout increased for them by about 11%. So they got more involved between those two elections. It was a larger share of youth voters in 2022 midterms here in Michigan. So I think, the campaigns are expecting that even though traditionally younger voters are less involved than, their parents or the older generations, that changes as they begin to, get more involved in civic life. And so the idea is to kind of like, capture that energy and make sure that they understand the stakes of elections.
Malachi, let me ask you, you talked about the effect that influencers are having on younger voters. I want to ask you about, are they being affected by traditional media? We're seeing all of these dozens and dozens and dozens of television ads for Harris and Trump and then Harris and then back and forth and back and forth. Is traditional media having an effect on the younger voters?
I think it does to some extent, in that the political ads that you see on the television also are run online. They're run on YouTube, like ad nauseum. They're run, on Google, on the web pages that you go to. So young people are still seeing them, but in terms of like traditional media sources, they're not going to the home pages of websites. They're not checking in on, news coverage. A lot of the news, from the conversations I've had, people say a lot of the news that they're getting are from Instagram posts that their friends are making, like on their stories, things that they're sharing together, TikTok posts, YouTube, things like that. That is really the primary source of information for a younger generation that is like being politically engaged and activated through online conversations. I think part of this is recognizing, on part of the Harris campaign, it's recognizing that they're probably going to get more out of investing in, spending time in these online spaces as opposed to, spending a bunch of time trying to get on CNN. And that is probably why there were 3 influencers who interviewed Kamala Harris at the DNC before she actually sat down for a traditional press interview. There were like 200 content creators that were credentialed at the DNC in Chicago. And they were encouraged to go around and just post organically. I mean, the campaign is trying to like basically get this volunteer kind of army of people to post in the style that they are most familiar with. And Congressman Frost talked about this a little bit last night, too. That's going to look different for every content creator. They're not really trying to prescribe what the posts look like. They're just hoping that, the post can help share the message in the unique way that these content creators talk to their audiences and each other.
If you're just joining us, we're speaking with BridgeDetroit reporter Malachi Barrett about what the Kamala Harris campaign is doing to turn the young people out to vote. Malachi, just sticking to topic, of course, but switching gears just a little bit. A lot more Black and Latino men voted for Trump in 2020 versus 2016. Why do you think this is true based on your research and everything you've been reporting on? And why are there more men of color supporting Donald Trump this go around?
Yeah, I think a key question for me is whether Trump will get more votes in Detroit than he did in 2020 and continue that trend. I mean, he got more votes in 20 than he did in 16. Now it's a small share of the overall electorate. It was like a couple thousand. But it does seem to be growing. And why is that? I think there's a lot of different reasons for that. I've talked with younger men who just really like his style. They feel like personally connected to Trump and the way he kind of carries himself, his braggadocio, his swagger, the fact that he's a businessman and an entrepreneur and talks a lot about, creating wealth and opportunity for, business-minded folks. People also really credit him with the stimulus checks, which the Democrats have really tried to push back on in Detroit. The idea that Trump delivered the stimulus checks during the pandemic. He was sure to put his name on the checks, which has, contributed to that a little bit. Of course, Democrats will be like, well, that was Congress. That wasn't, specifically Donald Trump. But I have heard, men in Detroit say that, because of Trump, they had that extra money and they think that he'll do something like that for them again. I think there's a lot of interesting things going on with like masculinity in this country right now and people who are turning to more conservative ideals as a backlash to some of the gains that LGBTQ members of society have been making and, conversations around inclusion, not only DEI, but including, people of different gender expressions in society. That's created a bit of a backlash, particularly among people who kind of consider themselves more traditional and kind of more like religiously traditional. So those are a few reasons. I was also talking with an organizer in Southwest Detroit last night about some of the dynamics for Latino voters, because there's been some polling that shows they are actually less likely to vote than Black voters. And, part of that, from what I was told, is that, some of these people who are maybe first or second generation were fleeing countries that were politically destabilized. And so they don't have a lot of faith in the political system. Even they might vote for somebody who appears to be winning, even if they don't think that there will be best interest for their particular demographic group, but it kind of gets them on the right side. So I think there's a lot of like really complicated things going on there. Those are just a couple of like hints that I've been picking up, I guess.
Malachi Barrett is a reporter for BridgeDetroit, and he was a former co-host of the Metro. Thanks for joining us on the Metro, Malachi.
My pleasure. Great to talk with you guys.
Yeah.
Coming up, it's Friday, and that means the Detroit documenters are coming by the station. We'll talk with them about all the exciting things that have been happening in public meetings around Detroit. This is the Metro on 101.9 WDET.
It is the Metro on 101.9 WDET FM. I'm Tia Graham. I'm here with WDET's news director, Jerome Vaughn. And Jerome, it's Friday.
I'm happy about that.
Yes, it's Friday, and we're excited for the long Labor Day weekend, of course. Jazz Fest festivities are happening. We also got the Hamtramck Labor Day Festival. So many other things are happening throughout the city of Detroit. But before that, it's time for our weekly conversation, all things public meetings with the Detroit Documenters. Jerome, we've been newsroom partners with Outlier Media and Detroit Documenters for years. What's partnership and how does it benefit your listeners? I'm thinking about that right now.
Well, it's important for democracy. It's important for Detroiters to be able to get out there and see what their elected officials are doing. And the documenters really help us because what they do is they give us access to places that, a handful of reporters could go, but you can't be in 12 places at once. So the documenters brings that information to WDET and other newsrooms, and we use that material to create stories. It really makes a big difference.
It does. So our listeners all benefit from the documenters, from what they do. So thank you to the Detroit Documenters.
That's no, we just want to lay it out how it really is. The curtain was pulled back a little bit for Detroit Documenters and the public at this week's Board of Zoning Appeals meeting, and included a training session for board members. While zoning might not be on the top of most people's minds, it's really hot in Detroit. The Metro spoke to Detroit City Council member Scott Benson a couple of weeks ago about how Detroit zoning needs have changed. Here's what he had to say.
So you need to look strategically at how we're doing industrial. And since Detroit is an old industrial city, we need to look at what was okay in the 40s and 50s may not be so positive nor compatible with the quality of life that we're looking for in the year 2024. And I'm going to say it's not compatible with the lifestyles that we want, which is why I'm really focused on downzoning where it's appropriate.
To give us a better sense of the Board of Zoning Appeals and its training session, we're joined by Detroit Documenter Megan Retigliano and Detroit Documenters Coordinator Noah Kincaid. Thank you both for joining us on the Metro.
Oh, thanks for having us.
So, Noah, we're going to start with you. Tell us, what is the Board of Zoning Appeals? What's its purpose?
So the Board of Zoning Appeals are they're the final arbiter of any issues affecting zoning in the city. So while if you need to get, let's say, a permit, you want to open a business somewhere, you may apply for that with, it's called BSEED. They're actually the Building Safety Engineering and Environmental Department, and they handle permitting and compliance. They're the enforcement of these zoning codes. But let's say they deny your permit. Who do you go to argue your case? You want to open whatever it is in a certain location. You go to the Board of Zoning Appeals, and they're going to hear your case, and they do it publicly at hearings. And they're a little different than the normal meeting we cover. They are an actual hearing. People have to be sworn in. They give testimony. Neighbors can come and give their side of, what they think about this business moving in. They're really interesting meetings to cover.
Tell us a little bit more about that distinction between the Board of Zoning Appeals and BSEED.
So BSEED may look at something a little more strictly. Like they may say, okay, well, you want to open a concrete crushing plant in an area of Core City, just hypothetically speaking.
Just hypothetical.
that is in an area that is currently zoned heavy industrial. They could approve that or deny it, right? But then when you get to the Board of Zoning Appeals, they're going to really start looking at all kinds of factors. They're going to actually be able to hold that hearing and hear from the neighbors, get all of that input. But they're also looking at the master plan, which is something done by the planning department and the city planning commission. And the master plan really looks at the future of zoning in the city. So they're looking 10 years, 20, 30 years out and saying, do we really want this area of Core City to remain heavy industrial? There's more neighbors that moved in. It used to be, pretty empty, but now there's this thriving, neighborhood right on the border of this area. So even if it's zoned currently heavy industrial, maybe they're planning to downzone it in the future and remove that zoning classification.
Megan, you went to the board meeting on Monday. It was a training session. What did you take away from that meeting?
I mean, I received as a documenter, and the public had access to really unique insights into how the Board of Zoning Appeals determines who can appeal a BC decision, namely that they have to be an aggrieved person. I also learned that the board very carefully considers their own potential conflicts of interest and how and when they'll identify those as part of their review process. And then they were also really encouraged to be active in the districts that they're representing as part of the Board of Zoning Appeals to really cultivate relationships and build context around their districts that can help them in their service.
Now, I read through your notes. That's part of what the documenters do. Was anything at the meeting surprising to you?
I was surprised at the level of scrutiny that's placed on determining whether someone can actually appeal a decision. And that is that they have to be an aggrieved person. So not only do they have to be uniquely impacted by the zoning decision, but they also have to prove that they suffer special damages.
And as you were watching this meeting, one of the things that struck me was some mention that the board is thinking about proposing moving from 7 to 9 members. Was there much talk about that?
Let me clarify a little bit. The board actually moved from 7 to 9 members earlier this year. But what I experienced as a new kind of listener into their process was that they were proposing changes to a document that really outlined how the board would function. And one of the changes that was called out was specifically around the number of board members.
If you're just joining us on the Metro, we're here with Detroit documenter Megan Ratigliano and coordinator Noah Kincaid discussing Detroit's Board of Zoning Appeals. Megan, how does having a better understanding of the process help Detroiters?
Well, I think having a better understanding of the process helps Detroiters know their rights and know when they can challenge decisions. And as a documenter, I really gained more insight into what to listen for and how the board determines who can make these appeals. They have to be able to demonstrate, like I was saying, a substantial impact and a special damage. So that could be a property value decrease due to noise, traffic, an obstructed view. They could be losing business income. They could be suffering from changes to their environment, and there could be health impacts. Or their property or where they live could be suffering from a change to its historic nature or its aesthetic value.
No, we've just got about 30 seconds yet. How can residents get involved in Detroit Documenters?
They can go to detroit.documenters.org and click on the link that says Become a Documenter.
It's super fun. I recommend it. And Noah's the best. So
All
Linnell.
right.
We love you, Linnell.
Megan and Noah, thanks so much for joining us. We're going to give you a day off next Friday to recover from the long Labor Day weekend, but we'll have some best of conversations next week. And we'll be back with the Detroit Documenters really soon. Again, Noah Kincaid and Megan Ratigliano.
Thanks so much.
That's the Metro for Friday, August 30th. You can listen to recent episodes online at WDET.org. Make sure to subscribe to the podcast on your favorite platform. The show is also on YouTube if you like listening that way. This is WDET-FM, Detroit Public Radio, your connection to news, music, and conversation. Jerome, thank you for an amazing week.
Hey, thank you, Tia. It's been a lot of fun.